Today we're honored to welcome Albert Baramante to the show today. I'm very happy to have him on. He talks about some very important topics, right? Because today we live in so much information, right? We have so much information available, but a lot of us, we're not getting results that we want in our life. So what that really comes down to is behavior change, right? And this man knows so much about that and how we can actually implement this in our own lives. Because we can have so much information, but if we're not getting results that we want, then what is it all for, right? We have to actually create change in our own lives, and it really starts with our mind and how we use it in an intelligent way. So I'm very excited to have him on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent, Anthony. Thank you so much for having me on here.
Absolutely. So I'm very curious to hear your story and how you got into this whole field in the first place and how you're being of service.
Well, yeah, I started coming, being much of a bookworm when I was growing up, and a family where I was different. Now, my origin story is I come from a large family, a large Italian family. I have, three older brothers, one older sister. I'm the youngest, but I was also different. The one that was different because my entire family is blue collar athletic, and through they're on. My brothers were on the football team. My father was a football coach. My oldest brother, was a football coach for many years, and I was an academic. I still am through and through. So I didn't really belong because I had no interest in sports, whether it's playing or even spectator sports. Zero interest in that. So I found myself kind of like being at odds with the family because I love to read. And I was a voracious reader as a child and teenager. I spent a lot of time in the library on the weekends. And I would, get books. So I started reading a lot about behavior change. I read books by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People by Stephen Covey. And then I was also reading books on cognitive behavioral therapy, which, was not the average reading for a 15, 16-year-old male. But that was, in the 90s, and that was like sort of where I felt I belonged. And that got me interested in behavior change and psychology and mindset. And so I knew by the time I was a junior in high school that I wanted to be a psychologist and that I wanted to go into studying human behavior. Plus, I was just always a curious person. I was always very curious about what made people tick. And so that's kind of got me interested on this path of studying behavior.
Awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that. So it sounds like you really kind of immersed yourself within the field, right? You had, you constantly were learning, is constantly interested, and had that curiosity within yourself too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and that's one of the things that I've always had in me was a curiosity. I was very curious, even as a child, very inquisitive. Some would say nosy, but hey, that was a superpower of mine. I was always just curious, and so I kind of reframe that nosy when people say, "Oh, this person's nosy." I'm like, no, they're just curious as to why things are the way they are, and so that was sort of like my fundamental drive growing up was just a curiosity about things, and I still have that to this day.
I love it. Yeah, it's so important. It's like the seed of change is awareness and just being open to new ideas and things like that. Like, what changes did you see from implementing these things in your life? Like, what was the value that you got that kind of inspired you to help people go along the same path?
Well, it was sort of like even just understanding my own life, feeling lonely, as a teenager and as a child. I was surrounded with people. I certainly was, but I just felt alone. And I think that was led to my drive to really understanding emotions in general, not only to help myself, but also to help other people. And that's why a lot of people get into this field of, personal development or mental health care is because we've gone through our own stuff too growing up.
That's such a great point, right? Because I find whenever we have our story, we turn our pain into purpose, right? Then we can get to the other side of it. It's like now we have the experience and the knowledge to actually help people, right? And a lot of times we look at these things as just obstacles and challenges, or maybe we start to be a victim of our reality, but we actually can embrace these things and get to the other side and be of service. I think that's what the point is in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And that's part of it is just being able to really get into it and start to enjoy things in
Absolutely.
a sense.
So, when it comes to behavior change, what should people know about that? Like, what are some misconceptions, and how can we start to think about this in a way that is effective in our own lives?
Well, when it comes to behavior change, there's two minds that are important to know: the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Now, if you want to look at, if you're interested in going down this rabbit hole, look at, works of Freud, for instance. Our subconscious mind is like the driving force of our personality. And sometimes, and we've all done this, or we consciously wanted to do something, change something. But yet we struggle with that, because our mind may not agree or may not pull us in that right direction. So the important thing with behavior change is, number one, being consistent. And sometimes doing the behavior first before the motivation. And what I mean by that is, let's say you set a goal that you want to get 15 minutes of movement every day when you wake up. Now, we've all been there, that when the alarm clock goes off, the last thing you want to do is get up and move. But the important thing is, if you set that as a habit and write it and commit to it, you'll find yourself getting motivated to do that. But it's important to take action first. And that's important too when it comes to motivation and behavior changes. Commit to taking action to it.
Absolutely, yeah. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, I feel like it really starts with the micro change as well, like starting to set yourself up for success so you're not having all these distractions in your way, right? Of course, it's not about being perfect in any way, but how can we start to stack the conditions in our favor, right?
Well, yeah, and that's a very good point. And micro actions are important. If you're a person that really didn't, oh, I'm going to write, a book in a week. Now, that's not realistic. Because first we got to get you in the habit of writing daily, even if that's 5 minutes. Each day commit to 5 minutes of doing something. Because a lot of times, and we've seen this too, a lot of people make these large commitments and these drastic changes only to fail because it's too fast. If you think about it, over 90% of people do not follow through with their New Year's resolutions. And it's not because New Year's resolutions are, taboo. It's because the fact that a lot of times they're not setting them up strategically. Instead of setting micro actions up and saying, okay, here's the goal. Now, this is my goal. This is my, finish line. But there may be 50 to 100 steps in between that need to move us there. So what is step one? And that's why the popular saying, and it's cliche, is the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Or it's like, or the famous question, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Well, the same thing goes with our goals. Micro actions, one little thing at a time. One thing daily. Commit to doing one thing daily to whatever it is you set out to do. And I'm not asking, we're not asking you to do anything where it's like life-changingly different, but do something, even if 5 minutes or 10 minutes, that's towards your goal every day. Commit to that. And then this way, by the end of the year, that's 365 micro actions you've taken, which is much further than where you were last year.
100%. That makes a lot of sense. Why do you think people go for these huge, audacious goals, but don't really have a foundation of creating like things in life? Like we all have like these massive things, and we kind of overwhelm ourselves, and that's why we don't succeed in a sense. Like, why do people do that instead of setting these goals that we can actually accomplish in our lives?
Well, it really boils down to instant gratification. We want to be instantly, through enjoyment, so instant gratification. And just to tie it back to my work, I work a lot with actors and performers, and I can tell you that a lot of actors in performance are somewhat impatient by standards because they want to the overnight success. They want to get that lead in that film or that lead in that TV show right away because that's what success truly means. And so I think because of everything being so instantly available to us now, whether it's apps, whether it's anything we want is really at our fingertips now, which gives us a paradox because while we have everything there that we can get, our patience, our frustration threshold has gotten a lot lower because we're now expected to get the results immediately. So when we set this lofty goal, okay, well, there's going to be resistance. There's going to be moments that are not going to work, or attempts that we're going to do that are not going to work, and we get easily frustrated. That must mean, okay, this goal is not. I'm not going to be able to do this. I give up. I quit.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I mean, a lot of us, we go for these things, but we don't necessarily have a plan either. We just kind of like do whatever seems right. But again, going back to that immediate gratification, as you mentioned, like the problem with that is it's not lasting, right? So we have to actually put these plan into place to get the results that we want to.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely, and that's part of it too. Is we've got to set these plans up here too. So, and that's exactly what's happening here.
Yeah, makes sense. So, if we have goals, like what are some things we can do to actually have a plan and stick to it, right? Because obstacles are going to happen, but like, how do we stay on course, right? Because a lot of times I find we people we don't stay the course, unfortunately.
No, a lot of times we don't see the course because we're so focused on, we're so attached to the outcome that we're not seeing that we're making progress, that we're one step closer to things, and that's why a lot of people quit right before they're about to get success, and they wind up giving up because they're frustrated that they're not where they think they should be. And sometimes I just wonder, if you hung out just a little bit longer, you would have seen that. So I think again, it's about breaking it down into small, tiny steps. Whatever goal you're going to set out with.
Absolutely, it makes a lot of sense. So, when it comes to goal setting, like what are some common mistakes that people make? Like, are there certain obstacles that you see on a common basis that are just people are doing that are getting in their own way in a sense?
Yeah, well, two major ones. Number one, setting too big of a goal, or somewhat of an unrealistic goal. Now, and I say this humorously, if you're, someone who's 5'2", I'm not entirely sure that being an NBA player is going to be in your future. Now, I'm not saying you cannot find success in other areas, but we need to kind of reflect: is this goal necessary? I take for instance for me, I have not a very good singing voice. Well, if I set out that I want to be, a recording artist, yeah, I mean, that may not be realistic for me. So I think that's part of it too, is we set up goals that are not realistic, or they're too soon, too fast. Again, going into my work with actors, and I've worked with actors too, where it's like, they'll set the goal, well, in 2 years I want to be on Broadway. That may not be realistic. Not saying that Broadway is not in the cards for you. But let's reframe the thing. If you have no experience and you want to be on, if you're setting the goal 2 years to be on Broadway, what we need to do is wire that down. Okay, maybe you need to do off-Broadway. Maybe you need to do some regional theater first. Maybe a goal could be in 2 years I'd like to be, have a few professional plays in my belt. Fine. So it's usually setting goals that are too big, or setting unrealistic goals.
Yeah, I see that as well. It's like you have to have like a level of intelligence to this as well. Like because a lot of times we kind of often go for things that may not be in alignment with who we really are as well. We kind of talked about that. It's like I feel like it's important to get in touch with what you actually want in life too, so you actually have that purpose behind it, right? Maybe start to embrace the challenges and find your why, like who you're doing this for, right? Like who you want to be of service to on the other side too.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's important too. It's who do you want to be in service to, and also just really mapping out what is the true objectives, and they need to come from the heart. It's like you should, another trap I think, which can almost add to the third reason, is setting the goal for the wrong reason. If you're setting the goal to make other people happy or to please somebody else, that's not going to work. That would be like someone coming, let's say to a therapist or a counselor and say, I want to stop smoking. Why? Because my partner wants me to do that. But what do you want? Because if you're not fully committed to it, because if you're doing it again for somebody else, you're not going to be fully committed to the process. And when you're not fully committed to the process, that needle is not going to move. That needle of change is not going to move.
Absolutely. I imagine fear plays a role in this as well. Like, how do people overcome their fears in a sense to actually get what they want? Like, how we start to think about that in a sense?
Well, I think the first thing is to acknowledge the fear, because fear, first of all, is very important. It's a very important emotion. And the reason why it's important, historically, that's what kept us alive. That's what kept our species around for hundreds and thousands of years, was because it helps protect us from danger. And our brain does a great job of doing that. However, the dangers that we experience today that, we don't, what I should say is the dangers we had experienced thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago don't affect us today. We're in shelter. We have enough food. We have enough, safety around us. But our brain still operates in the keeping us alive factor. And therefore, anything that can potentially be a bit threatening, and that could be simply just putting ourselves out there now. It says, okay, danger, and then we come up with justifications as to why, we won't do that. Or why we're not going to do that. And that's why a lot of times with fear, it's very easy to logically talk ourselves out of doing something that's scary. I'm too tired. This opportunity's not really worth it. I don't feel so good. When in reality, it's all about, it's an illusion, what you're experiencing. Because ultimately, you're scared, you're frightened about this change or this new. Because if you just do the certain action or this goal, your identity may change. Your story is going to change. And as change in general is very scary for us, even though it's a constant in life, that we're always going to be changing and that situations are going to change, it's still a scary process with change.
Definitely. What I like to say is know fear, right? KNOW. You have to know it. You have to understand your tendencies, your dispositions to things, so you can navigate it in a skillful manner. Because, like all of us, we have fear in certain things, but other people may not, right? So it depends on your own personal path and how you kind of navigate that in a way that is going to be advantageous to your goals rather than destructive.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing, too, is just knowing the fear is important. And acknowledging it. It's like, okay, this is openly what's going on here. Now let's talk ourselves through it. Yeah. And, acknowledge that's important, but that you're okay. You're going to be okay. But it's just about talking yourself through it and then reframing it. Now, when it comes to, like, whether it's performing, public speaking, is when we start to reframe that fear as excitement. Because if you look at it physiologically, fear and excitement are, on a physiological level, the same sensations. Butterflies in your stomach, elevated heart rate, elevated pulse rate, and, just some sort of just tension there. But that's exactly what brings us excitement. So instead of saying I'm afraid, I'm excited. Now it's going to mean a different thing, and I'll give you an example. A while back, I was at a regional conference, and I had to make an 8 a.m. I was in an 8 a.m. panel with a couple other presenters, and for some reason, a couple hours, I just had this tension, this nerves that were just kicking in, which is odd because I normally don't experience that. So I sat with it for a bit, and then I said, let me just switch this off and say I'm excited about this presentation. So then I just got myself in a peak state of like, this is going to be great. And when I did that, quick minor reframe, I didn't ignore the sensations. I didn't try to fight it. I didn't say, get focused, get focused, get focused. I said, okay, let me work with this. And when I gave the talk, people who knew me were coming up and saying, wow, that was the best talk you ever given. And I actually enjoyed it. And I was like on a euphoric high after. And so I think that's important too, is once you know it, you can then work with it. And let it become an ally rather than, something that'll hold you back.
Yeah, I love it. It's like we have to understand it could be situational as well. So having like the awareness of why am I feeling this? Is it like a physical thing, right? It's like, is there something that is going on in my mind that I'm not used to? Like just being aware of these things is the first step. And then as you mentioned, you start to kind of embrace it in a sense. You use it as a tool for you rather than against you. And you understand that it's actually kind of part of the process in a sense. You just got to have learn how to work with it. And yeah, you just you conquer it as you move along in the process.
Absolutely. No, totally.
Yeah. So I feel like, the more stagnant we are, like the more fear can accumulate because we're not taking action. Right? We're overthinking. We're doing all these things. It's kind of like add up in our lives. Do you find that at all?
Oh, absolutely. And again, it's a cumulative effect. That's why it's adding up. Those simple little things are, what's going to add up, and that's going to make a monumental change. That's why some people almost like are surprised at how far they came. When you literally look and you take these small actions, eventually you may just wake up one day saying, wow, look what I just did. Because you did slow. And that's the thing, like slow and steady. And that's where the phrase goes, slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah. I feel like too many of us we're not doing enough self-assessment either, right? We're taking a lot of action, but then we're not really calibrating how we take action. So we couldn't get the same results, right? So having to ask yourself some empowering questions like, what went well, what didn't? How can I learn from this? How can I get better? You start to kind of live more in congruence with your goals and actions. Like, you find that is empowering as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it has to be congruent too. Like the actions and the goal has to be meaningful to you. And otherwise it's going to become just this is nice to have, this is nice to do, but you're not going to do it. Because again, there's a lot of people walking around with the should dynamic. I should be doing that. I should be doing that. And we call it the tyranny of the shoulds, which is I should be. That's what I should be doing. It's like, well, I should be cleaning my house. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there reading, the newspaper or playing on my phone. Yeah, I should clean today. Meanwhile, I'm still on my phone.
Right, yeah. It kind of goes back to what do you actually want in life? Like, what are your goals? And not just like, what are these things I think I should do? Or like people want me to do in a sense, but like, what is actually important to you, right? And you actually start to live in accordance with that. And that's going to yield the best results. That's what I find.
Absolutely. And that's where it goes to an important thing of looking what do you truly want? What is it that's important to you? Because again, if you're not focusing on that, it's not going to work. It's not going to be that valuable to you anymore.
Yeah. How do we get in touch with what we want more, in a sense? Like, what is your take on that, and actually getting clear on what we want in a definite way?
Well, I would definitely sit down and look at all of your actions, look at your goals, and think to yourself, is this what I truly want to do, or is this what somebody's telling me what to do? And sometimes our parents do this, our teachers, our family has influences on us and say, well, you should major in medicine because, that's, well, what if you want to major in art? What if you want to major in, in another field? So truly sit down and say, is this what I truly want? Because if it's something that you want, anytime you take action to it should bring you immense enjoyment. If it doesn't, that's when we have to figure out, like, if you dread doing a task, then obviously it doesn't bring you enjoyment. And you could tell yourself and tell other people how much you enjoy it. But if there's a part of you that dreads, like, oh, I got to do this today, you don't enjoy it.
Right. Yeah. Not to say like we're gonna feel like doing things all the time, but we should still have like a passion for it, in a sense, right? Like, because discipline is doing a thing anyways, but it's also like you have to understand, like, if it's always like that, then there's probably some type of friction there that we need to address.
Yeah, if it's constantly we're struggling, and that, even if you look at children, for instance, it's, not of course every child doesn't wake up at 7 or 8 a.m. excited to go to school. None of us are dreaded, even if we like school. But what we need to look for, especially if you're, for parents on this listening, is if you see a child starts crying and screaming that they don't want to go to school, that's an exploration of something deeper going on. What's happening at that school? Why is this happening? So, and if you really get up, of course, I love what I do. Now, of course, if I have to get up at 6 a.m. to do something, I may not love it at 6 a.m. But if I start realizing, if I get up every morning and I have a knot in my stomach, that's when I have to sit back and say, okay, what am I doing? Why is this happening? Why am I having all this tension? And that needs to be addressed. Now, something needs to change, whether it's the entire job or something within that job. But the important thing is, and this is why, again, the body really will tell you, and your intuition will tell you if something is working or not working.
Yeah, makes sense. Sounds like we have to overcome ourselves a lot, right? It's not necessarily we have to overcome the circumstance, we have to overcome ourselves within the circumstance, right? Like, what are we thinking, how we feel, and just becoming aware of these things, and, again, going back to self-assessment, and you make that forward progress and start to build that momentum, and I feel like action breeds clarity as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, it does bring action in a sense.
Yeah. Because I kind of said it before, it's like, the more stagnant we are, it's like, it's just so much easier to be in that fear state without doing anything. But if we keep moving forward, it's like the next action will present itself, right? It's like, it doesn't have to be like the perfect thing, but it's like, what is the next step? You just keep moving forward, and eventually you get there.
Absolutely. And that's the important thing, too.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything else that comes to mind when it comes to, I guess, impediments of action? Like, what is keeping people from moving forward in their lives?
Well, again, fear. That's, I would say, probably the biggest one is fear. That keeps us from moving forward. Fear of change, fear of the unknown, fear of failure, even fear of success. That prevents us from moving forward. Again, and or even, and also I would believe tied into that fear is the lacking self-confidence that you can do this. So
Yeah.
I think fear and lack of confidence are two major things.
Yeah. Fear of success is an interesting one, right? It's like, how do we build that self confidence over time? I believe it's like just doing what you say, like being consistent within your goals and becoming the person you actually say you want to be. Do you find that too?
Absolutely, because a lot of people get it kind of backwards, where it's like, okay, well, I need the confidence to do this. You know, I need the confidence before, after, before I take the action, or, if I, once I get more confidence, I'll go out on stages, or once I get more confident, I'll go, and write more, or go and speak more. It's the opposite. You got to speak and write more to get confidence, and you got to take action more, and to get that confidence. So again, taking the daily actions, non-negotiables is what I say. Put something on your calendar and make it non-negotiable, and also stepping outside your comfort zone.
Right. So making it challenging and an adventure too.
Yeah,
That makes sense because it kind of keeps the motivation going, right? It's kind of like progressive overload. Right? You do the thing and you kind of just add to it. Like these tiny habits that we talked about, it's like making those small incremental improvements over time, and as opposed to a huge overhaul. It's what it's like. Sounds like it's a good fit for the majority of the time.
absolutely, and that's the important thing there.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, like, is there a time and place for that when, like, when people are just kind of done in a sense, right? They just want to really make a huge change. Like, is there a way to go about that?
Yeah, I mean, well, again, the small actions is what's going to really create the change. And again, it's doing the behavior before, the mental about being ready. And it's okay to sit with a little discomfort. Because that's the only way we're going to get over is by actually taking action. Waiting to be comfortable to do something is not going to happen.
No.
And that's where I think a lot of us fall into that trap. All right, well, I'll do it tomorrow because tomorrow I'll be more confident. And tomorrow comes along, and then that becomes I'll do it tomorrow.
100%. That's such a great point. That's the key right there. Is it happens right now. We don't wait. You can't like sit on this procrastination thing. Like the key is to understand all you have is right now, anyways. So who you are to be, you are now becoming. So if you want that thing, you have to start right now. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but you start to get in alignment with what you want, and you start the process, and you have to trust it.
Absolutely, and that's the important thing too.
100%. Like you have to keep the mission fresh in your mind, right? Be careful of what you're thinking about and how you feel and all these things, because they do matter and they add up. Like, so you actually have the strength to actually move throughout the day and all these challenges, right? Because it's not going to be an easy thing in many instances, right? So things are going to be in the world that distract you, but can you have that strength and that center and that stillness to keep on going for the life that you want?
Absolutely, and that's the important thing.
Yeah, 100%. Now, from a psychological perspective, like, what can help us stay the course during those hard times? Like, we've talked about fear, and what about, like, in terms of setbacks and failure, right? Because those are clear things that are inevitable in a sense. Like failure, it's part of the process, right?
It's part of the process, and I say look at that as feedback. Look at that as data points. So when you have something that sets you back, a setback, a failure, a frustration, look at that as feedback. One of the greatest inventors of our time, I believe it was Thomas Edison or Ben Franklin, who invented, made a lot of inventions, but he failed 1,000 times prior to that. And someone asked him and said, "Well, why did you keep going after failing 1,000 times?" He goes, "I didn't fail at all. It was 1,000 times to get closer to the goal." So the important thing is like to look at failure as actually welcoming it. Okay, this didn't work. This plan didn't work. Now I have information of what not to do. And why did this fail? Okay, so I need to adapt my approach. Look at children. Going back to children again. When children learn to walk, when a toddler learns to walk, they often fall down hundreds of times before they're able to. Because one of the things that we may not really appreciate is walking is a very complex, coordinated action that we take for granted because it's so automatic to us. But for a small child, learning to stand upright and to control themselves and to move creates is a heavy coordinated action. It takes a lot of physical and even some mental training to do. And we've never seen in the history of time someone say, I quit walking. I quit. No, they got up and they did it, and they may have fall down hundreds of times, but they got back up and kept going, and eventually that'll happen. We've lost that, even though we've did this, all did this. We've lost that persistence. So the important thing is to look at setbacks as not as something is wrong, but more for informational purposes only. This is feedback. Yeah. This is helpful. Okay, I now know what not to do.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of cognitive reframing, and it's don't change the goal, change the approach in a sense.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to high performance and unlocking our creative potential, I feel like such an important topic for people in general. What are your thoughts on that? How can we start to tap more into our genius, so to speak?
Well, the important thing is to know that we have that genius and to sit with it. And if you look at especially a lot of the newer models of cognitive reframing and cognitive models, we have the answers within. All of us are equipped to do that. It's just that we get lost because we're, even before the age of 8, we're told many times to get out of our own head, to be serious and not be creative. So we stop listening to ourselves and stop trusting ourselves. And therefore not looking at the wisdom that's within us. So this is why, again, when most people have gut feelings about situations, most of the time they're not wrong. They're pretty accurate. Usually what really stumps people or messes with people is when they don't listen to that gut feeling, they ignore it or dismiss it. And that's a problem.
100%. So it starts to get into intuition in a sense, listening to your inner guidance, right? Because we start to recognize these patterns and we start to develop a level of mastery, right? And then we start to, I guess, become the way in a sense. All these practices that we do, we just don't want to think anymore. We're kind of in the moment.
Right. Mm-hmm. Because again, with an instant gratification, we're not thinking long term. We're thinking, I want it now.
Right. Yeah. Because it's not just what you're doing anymore. It's literally your identity in a sense. It's your actions that have been accumulating over time. This positive, this positive virtuous circle, and now it's you're just ready, ready to be of service, and you have all these tools in play, and it's kind of you are that person, right? And it's always a process as well.
Right. No, we're always that person. We're always gonna be that person, and I think that's where there's that fear of, well, I'm gonna become someone different. No, you're not. You're still you, and it's okay to change. It's okay to adapt. So give yourself that permission.
Yeah, that's very important because the ability to adapt and listen to your body, as you mentioned, it's a lot of times we let our ideas of things interfere with reality instead of actually listening to what is real.
Mm-hmm. No, we stop listening to what is real because, again, we're going based on what's happening there. You know, we're going based on our fears.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times it's like once we start to overcome these things and gain clarity in the moment, it's very empowering, right? Because once we thought these things were impossible, now they start to become possible. And that's such an empowering thing for many people, right?
And that's really, you know, the heart of it is that, you know, making the possible, you know, and making the impossible become possible. Again, because it's within our reach. Now, again, maybe you may need to reiterate your goal or refine it for it to become possible, but it can become possible. You know, now again, like I'll go back to what I said much earlier. You know, maybe the goal of an NBA player at 5'2" may not be possible. However, to be a good player, that can be possible. To win games, that can be possible. To be able to, you know, shoot a ball into a basket at any height, that's possible. And so then that's where it comes to, like, let's reframe that a bit. And let that become possible. And then let's go to that goal. And then every time you reach the goal, then you could sit there and say, okay, this is great. Now let me expand it further.
Yeah. I feel like it's important to enjoy the process as well. Like it's all about the process, right? Because a lot of times we get to the goal, but that's all we're focused on. But we're not really understanding like it's all about the present moment, and you have to enjoy that as much as you can, right? Because then it's instead of just like getting the goal and that's it. No, it's like you enjoy your life and you enjoy the pursuit.
Absolutely. That's the important thing. You enjoy the pursuit of it. And that should be just the fun of it alone.
Yeah.
I think when we start looking and enjoying the pursuit of things, the outcome, you know, it's great, but it's not important now. Like I work with actors and a lot of people who, you know, claim, you know, who make their commitment to be a lifelong actor. This is going to sound counterintuitive, but it's like what you really should be striving for is do you get up every morning and you love what you do? Yes. Then you've won.
For sure. Yeah. All you can do is control your actions anyways, right? It's like we can't necessarily control the outcome in a sense, but it's like we have to take all of our energy and focus on things we can control, right? How we respond to life, right? It's because we can't let the external circumstances dictate our reality. We have to choose to be a victor instead of, you know, being disempowered through the circumstances.
Exactly. And it boils down to, are you a victim or a creator?
Right.
It's up to you. It's the same situation is going to happen. And also another thing about this is why I often say not to become too attached to the outcome, because a lot of times what we want may not happen on our timeline or how we conceive it to be. You know, but when we have a system and we're taking constant action, we will get there. Again, it may not be exactly on our timeline, but we will get there. You know, if you stay committed and you are doing something you truly love to do, you will get somewhere to that destination. Again, it may not be. You may set a goal for 6 months. It may take you 9 months. It may take you a year. It may take you 2 years. But you'll get there.
Right. Yeah. It goes back to trusting the process and staying committed, right? It's like you start to embrace all these challenges and say, hey, this is how it's supposed to be. The obstacle is the way, right? You understand like all these challenges are happening for you in a sense. And I know it may be hard sometimes, right? It's difficult to do. But as you do that, it actually gets easier over time to have that mindset in those situations.
Absolutely. It's absolutely easy to do that when you are able to have that mindset.
Yeah, I mean, we are what we repeatedly do, right? So we have to take that hard action, and it kind of becomes a part of you in a sense, and it makes things much more graceful and how you navigate fear, all these things that we've been talking about. It's a skill.
It sure is. It sure is a skill.
And it's fun to know that too, because now the pen is in your hands and you're writing your story every single day, right? You're no longer being a victim of your reality. And you start to choose to be a victor, right? No, you're not perfect. No, things aren't going to be like exactly how you want. But challenges, you start to understand like these things aren't these overwhelming things that you're afraid of anymore, right? You
Right.
start to, it's always a process, like we mentioned, and you start to conquer these things and realize like, hey, like this is it's happening for me, and you embrace it. That's what it's all about. And you just keep moving forward to reach that potential.
Yes. And that's important. Just keep moving. You will get there. Again, it's who knows? There's things that are out of your control, but what we can control is how we're going to handle it and how we're going to cope. That's definitely 100% in our control.
Yeah. Going back to knowing yourself, right? You have to understand how our story has impacted us to this up to this point, and understanding like our fears and our tendencies and all these things, and putting together a plan to move forward. Right, all these things like they work together, and the problem is a lot of us were kind of like in the dark about our own life, and we don't have a clear sense of direction. Right, and I feel like these things can be helpful with that too.
Absolutely. Well, this is again having a planning is very important, and developing a plan, and even sometimes working with a coach too. Whether it's a business coach, a personal development coach, someone that can help you, even be a sounding board, that can say, okay, this is a plan of action. And this is why, ideas and goals are great, but there needs to be a plan in action that you can implement. Otherwise, it becomes an idea, a dream. Great, but that's not concrete.
Yeah, having someone that's walked the path can act as a guide. That can be very helpful.
Absolutely, and that's an important thing too, is letting it be a guide.
Yeah, accountability, mentorship. The cool thing is like you start to become that as well, right? You start to actually be a guide for individuals and helping guide people for their own answers, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, very cool to think about because that can be motivation to keep going. Yeah. All right, Albert. Is there anything else that comes to mind when it comes to mindset, behavior change, or we covered it?
Yeah, it's just to be tolerant of setbacks and welcome them, and look at that as a challenge rather than a problem. Okay, what do I need to do about this? What's going on here? And get out of our own head, because we have a tendency to look at things and be negative about it. It's like we have a negativity bias. And again, it's there to keep us alive. You could do an action and get so many different compliments. But then one person gives you something, maybe constructive. And all of a sudden, that all you're doing is focusing now on that one negative, when you've just negated the other 20 good things. So the important thing is when you have these setbacks and these things come up is to not to catastrophize about it and not to look at this as like doom and gloom. But okay, what can you get from this? What can I gain from this experience?
Yeah. So it sounds like celebrate the progress too, and focus on what you want.
Yes, that's the important thing.
Yeah, it's important to have that grace in the process too, right? It's like it can be difficult, but staying the course is what it's all about for sure.
Yes.
All right, Albert, this has been awesome. I appreciate you today for coming on the show, sharing your
Thank
story
you
with
again.
us on everything, mindset, behavior change, and actually utilizing the knowledge that we have, right? Because knowledge is not power. Knowledge applied is power and wisdom, right? So that's how we create change, and having skills to navigate life. It can help us with anything. It can be health, wealth, relationships, whatever it is. It's like we have to apply these things to, again, be the change we wish to see in the world in a sense, be a model on life for what's possible. So it's been an honor and I appreciate you.
Thank you again for having me on here.
Absolutely. It's been a lot of fun. So if we want to get connected with you and your work, where can we go?
So you go to our website, albertbramante.com, and I'd love to chat with you there.
Okay. Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again.